So this study is, although I am a conservation architect, but this study takes towards the behavioral aspect of, behavioral aspect is one of the layers that conservation process could be looked at. So, to move on for understanding certain definitions. So the cognition is a larger umbrella that makes us to understand how individuals acquire, process, and take decision. So the cognitive process is the way individuals seek, present, process, and retrieve the information depending on their cognitive characteristics and style. The embodied cognition. There are three theories that comes before understanding of embodied cognition. There is a social cognitive theory. There are proxemics theory and also the embodied cognition that talks about the cognition is just not about the mind, but it is dynamically interacting with the body and the environment. So on to perception definition. And the temple is itself defined as the sacred precinct. And the pilgrims are from the larger visitors group. They are the subgroup, which defines as a pilgrims, largely, which seeks for the specific journey towards the devotion, I would say. And the navigation is something one should know where to go and how to go. Further, the wayfinding theory supports how to navigate in the built environment. And the experience is about that leaves an impression on someone. So, in order to establish my conceptual background, I did some basic literature study that being done on the five major parts, which talks about the temple evolution from concept to the administrative unit and later on how it evolved as a community spaces. And the second study that's talked about the spatial analysis, which talks about the visitor's perspective along the spatial sequence, or probably it takes multiple spatial analysis across. And then the cognitive mapping that talks about the visitor's navigation ability and the mobility pattern in the environment, or per se I would be saying in heritage environment. And then spirituality, which define that the spiritual value could be understood, and there are this value is influenced by the visitor's belief, cultural value, and the environmental elements. And then behavioral science, largely in behavioral analysis, integrating all this, the certain study that talks about the tourism, in tourism domain I will be saying specifically, destination reputation. It also talks about the post-consumption behavior and also the emotional accessibility once you are visiting to the site. But this, these research differently done in one domain. So the scope for my study here lies on integrating the cognition and spatial analysis, holistically understanding the spiritual environment altogether. And one more point to be added here, the studies that we've done are largely on a regional level and also on a complex level. So the context that established that the study in Indian context for the precinct is not being studied. And to further moving on to my major study criteria, so there are various studies including these major category. I could not able to add all my literature here with respect to this paper. They are talking about the photo preferences that being done on the site. The questionnaire survey which being asked how people do feel. But there is a method which is a photo elicitation method, which is largely known for the people perception and their experiences. But the integration again with the cognitive mapping is something which what I'm trying to experiment here in this research. So my major research objective is to identify factors which influence the pilgrim's In order to do this, further add-on of literature being carried on, and the literature survey simultaneously being done with the pilot, I would say, is expert survey. Now, the factors that are influencing from the literature study is the spatial hierarchy, environmental cues, cognitive processing, and the spiritual experiences. These are the major variables that has been found. And there are these sub-factors that align with these variables. So, to follow the question that we further been asked that how do spatial hierarchy, environmental cues, and cognition shapes the pilgrim's spiritual behavior. So, what was happening now? Till now, I am trying to understand the behavior or spiritual behaviors of the pilgrim's behavior in sacred environment. But to experiment it, the study that went for Andhra Pradesh is to connect which is already being studied and something which is unexplored in Andhra Pradesh. So as we already, it's a brief timeline that I have made. In order to understand, there was a time that recorded from 9th to 11th century where we have a fully developed temple in mature form and shape, which largely divided into concentric and linear plan. And specifically in South India, they evolved as a community space. So with that respect, what was happening in South India, the major notable dynasties are the Chalukyas and Cholas. So what was happening in, because the Chalukya dynasty is the initial dynasty to the Cholas. So during Chalukya dynasty, the Badami temples being constructed. At the very same time, towards the Thanjavur, there are some temples which also being constructed during that time. But then Chola later on took over, and then they further expanded the temples. And at this time, what was happening towards the East Godavari, which is, I would say, the eastern part or the eastern Chalukyas, who traveled due to their political alliances and the marriage alliances. So they also built the same temple with a similar typology, I would say, and that also being called as the Dravida style of architecture. So they are noted as the Eastern Chalukyas temple, and they also built between 9th to 11th century. And the specific these temples falls on the eastern Godavari bank. So these are the eastern side of the Godavari. So there are 7 temples that are noticeable from 9th to 11th century. But what to be observed is, as at present, there are 5 temples which are known as Pancharamam temples. So these temples evolved with a lot of mythical layer and I think political layer, and there are architectural existence to it, which is very rare. So these temples are having double story garbhagriha, which one cannot see. Even Thanjavur, there are temples, but such kind of detailed pradikshina path, that too of garbhagriha, first floor and second floor, is not being studied. So I will be coming to that, but how these temples are important. So these are the 5 temples. So there, according to these are the 5 Shiva temples, and according to mythology, the demon Tarkasura, who possessed a powerful Shiva linga, was fragmented, and Lord Kartikeya broke it into 5 pieces. And those 5 pieces fall into 5 different areas, and those become as a sacred Pancharama Kshetra. And one Arama is called as the Shiva, that is dedicated to one Shiva temple. And then there are various mythology, which I guess ma'am was stating that there was a Dakshin Kashi. So this place is also known as Dakshin Kashi, with a lot of mythology, that this was the land of King Drakshramam. And furthermore stories are there, because I am not going to the narratives, because my study is towards the spatial configuration. So, and the noted, I think, authors who wrote the books, and there was a society, Andhra see, it is, not under the water, but the water is being just touched upon, and I would say the 85% of the temple is on the water. And there is a mythical story that they tried to dig in and see what is the foundation of temple, but then after 15 meters they could see only the water inside. And that study is being done from the low-lying water area goes towards the east. So they started digging and just to understand what is the foundation of this, how the foundation is being laid. So they started for the west gopuram, and after 15 meters they could just see the water. So I don't know because I have not seen, but this is what I have heard from the priest. So now further moving on. So as you can see towards the right side, that is the two-story garbhagriha. That has 3 circumambulation. So this temple, as a complex, it has all 5 circumambulation that it takes place. So this study is a combination of qualitative and quantitative research. In order to understand in order to understand the results and discussion. So the sample that being collected as a pilot study from the 62 responded. The first part of questionnaire that talks about how much do you know. So the third layer that talks about, so the 5-point Likert scale is being assessed here because a lot of study on interpretation and the qualitative studies, even the thesis they use largely 5-point Likert scale. Just 4 minutes. Yeah, and then the contact alpha is performed in order to understand the internal consistency that being achieved 0.934. So the all data of 62 responded is being collected from the site itself. And the photo illustration result, as I stated, I have used 2 major methods. One is to understand perception, and second to understand the spatial analysis, spatial understanding about the temple environment. So the photo illustration result is about how the pilgrims they were perceiving and their understanding through emotional attachment is being derived from the symbolic meaning in elements, and also from the spatial understanding of temple environment. So this graph is saying that. And then further layering on it, the architecture, aesthetic and symbolism that being performed from the movement pattern. Because I'm talking about the navigation. When we talk about spatial analysis, movement pattern, under wayfinding theory, that adds a lot of information and significance for the study. So the movement pattern there are 6 major movements that has been identified. So the questionnaire being given to the people, not on map, in isometric views, and I asked them to just mark your navigation when you come to the temple. So these are the 4 gopurams, so which is a prakara, and then inside you have a Veda Mandapam, which is a temple complex, and within you have a temple structure, which is consisting of Garbhagriha and Mukha Mandapam. And we have the open Antarala, which is now being covered with some iron bridge, because they allow now people to go on the first floor as well. So, and the movement pattern also being added from another perspective where people are pausing and where they are moving. So the photo illustration method also being the sub method that adopted under that is to ask people which is your preferred location when you come, and in the evening, because as recorded from the movement pattern, in the morning people come, they do the deity darshanam, they bring their children, and then they go for their work. Because this temple is being, according to the study from the questionnaire survey, it could very easily can be understood that this particular area is being the temple is being treated as their own temple, as a family temple. So they come in the morning and they also come in the evening just to sit in their favorite areas. So these are the 11 areas that we recorded. So I think one of the So the secretary is very much celebrated here with their activity. So it also has one of the major components to be studied in this area. So these are the 11 components where we have sacred water, which is a Sapt Nadi, which is a 7 tributary which comes together and makes, that's another mythology. And then we have temple Garbhagriha and other 11 different spots. So now, because I'm talking about something which is a perception base, how am I going to quantify? So the quantification is being done with under the SPSS analysis, where I tried to look at the correlation. So there was a strong correlation, a perfect correlation that has been found between the movement and unique symbolism. And the movement, architecture, symbolism and multi-sensory cues. Also the memory that has a strong correlation with the sacred environment and the mental refreshment. And also the moderate correlation between orientation and calmness, which talks about the when you are orienting, people actually want to see first deity. So the takeaway from these results and discussions are spatial hierarchy, symbolism and sensory cues. Shapes pilgrims' spiritual and cognitive experience at this temple. And there is a strong correlation that has been found between movement, symbolism, memory retention and the attachment, spiritual attachment. So Garbhagriha, yes, it is theoretically also by default we say yes, that is going to be most sacred or the most attractive cell. But I think there has to be a process that can quantify that yes, this is the most attractive cell. And there are subcells that has been found like sacred tree, Nandi Mandapam, Sarva Mandapam and Antarala. So further discussion also being suggested by some authors that the space, if it is legible, it will improve wayfinding and spatial cognition. And also it means talk about the mental mapping, will also include with the walking interviews, and also the multisensory cues can also further reinforce the sacred behavior. So the contribution and implication for this paper is about the study of integration of photo elicitation and sketch-based mapping will reveal the visual and emotional understanding of any sacred environment. The framework which this pilot study is I think this is being validated through Cronbach alpha value also. And the ritual activities, spatial rhythm and sensory experience can be validated further in conservation process as the value addition approach. Yeah, and these are my questionnaires. And to move on further, I am further working on, because this is not enough in order to say this is the perception I had quantified it. So I am developing a theory through MOS, which is a SEM modeling, which further strengthens that these are the major variables that shapes the spiritual environment from the perspective of pilgrim's behavior. And also, the questionnaire is being sent for the experts review, and I'm in a stage of collecting the data. So yeah. So far, this is my